Well, welcome to the first episode of the Bow Nerds podcast. I'm Braxton. A lot of you know me as Hacks and Hunt, and I am more than stoked, just absolutely in unbelief that dreams do come true. So, Bow Nerds podcast. A lot of you guys are probably wondering, what the heck is he saying? Bow Nerds. Yes, it is the Bow Nerds podcast. It is catchy, and that's the whole point. So, well, we just want to welcome you guys to the first episode. AJ and I are so freaking stoked to break into some new things that a lot of people don't touch on, whether it's in the hunting world, archery world, little tiny tips and tricks with setting up your bow, setting up your complete setups, or just figuring out how to go on a hunt that you've never been on. But anyway, so again, I'm Braxton, and I am freaking stoked for this. So we'll let AJ introduce himself, and we'll talk about what we've got coming up.
Yeah, everybody, I'm AJ. You guys might know me from Knights of the Apex. Brax, so excited for this, man. We started talking about this a year ago. I think you brought this to my attention, and I thought it was a great idea. Just the stars weren't quite aligned, and then we brought the idea to Dialed because they were looking to get some more information on their new company up, and they were kind of all in on like, hey, we'll help you guys get off the ground with this. So props to them for literally paying for the mics we're recording on. I feel like it's the first weekend that your parents leave you home alone, and we're definitely going to throw a party, but we're going to try not to leave like too many beer cans around and mess up the house too bad. But we'll have a good time with this. And yeah, like Brax was saying, our goal with this podcast is we both have been a fan of each other's channels for a long time, but there's only so much content and information we can get out in the video format we were doing it on. So the advantage of this podcast is, with the contacts that we've made in the industry, we can have not just each other, but feed off of actual experts that truly know what they're doing and talking about, and get them on here and give you guys insight for our fellow bow nerds that love geeking out on those little details, that background information on what goes into some of these products, the gear that we use and we rely on when we're out hunting or just shooting our bows. So I'm beyond excited. I think our first episode, our first guest is the perfect guy to kick this off. We've got Kyle from Dca Custom Arrows, who's also one of the engineers for Dialed Archery. So I'm super stoked, Brax.
Dude, it's freaking... I can't even explain kind of my feelings about this whole thing right now, but yeah, this first episode with Kyle, I had never met Kyle before, never even talked to him other than a couple of DMs on Instagram, and dude, this dude doesn't even just, like, he knows more than any person I've talked to about arrows. Like, I was blown away what this guy preaches, teaches, and just, I mean, it's like free information to learn exactly like the perfect arrow setup. I thought you just throw a couple fletchings on there. Who cares if it's straight? Throw a bent tip on there and shoot it, and you're fine. Which it'll still shoot the bow, but no, he blew my mind with just information alone on arrows.
Dude, well, I mean, I think that's the perfect hype for this episode. So yeah, without further ado, Bow Nerds episode 1. Make sure you like, subscribe, share all this stuff with your buddies, and we're excited for all of you that are jumping on and getting behind this early. We really appreciate all the messages and support and shares and whatnot you guys have done. And yeah, welcome along for the ride. This is Bow Nerds episode 1, and we'll catch you guys.
Sweet. What's up, guys? I'm Braxton. We got AJ on here. We got Kyle today from Dca Custom Arrows. We are so stoked to not only talk about a little bit of just archery stuff, but those freaking sick fletchings that he just came out with that I know me and AJ have been playing around with those. So, yeah, we're going to just let Kyle just kind of introduce himself, what he does in this world, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, so like you said, Kyle Davidson, owner of Dca Custom Arrows. I started off in the game by just experimenting for myself and figuring things out. I'm a mechanical engineer, and so got into archery with the help of my good buddy TJ Eads, and kind of just started playing around with different setups and messing around with it, writing everything down. I work in research and development, so kind of just approached it like I do everything else in my regular day job, and wrote things down, isolated variables, tested, and did it all for myself. And then TJ was like, make me a set. And then I told the story, but the rest is history. So now I make, 300 to 400 sets of arrows a year. I do them for all makes and models, guys that have, 75 pounds or more, 33-inch draws, all the way down to, 25-inch draws and 40 pounds. So, and everything in between. So I get a lot of exposure to different setups, different bows, different everything. And the arrows, I get all kinds of feedback on them. But they've all been working really well so far. So on top of that, doing the vanes and then the Super Saber Vanes and points. So I have my subsonic points and the vane angle tool. So yeah, it's been crazy. And then on top of all that, the Dialed Archery site. So
yeah,
Busy man.
I feel like we've got so many like products and pieces of gear and rabbit holes we could potentially go down. And like for those listening that aren't familiar with Kyle, if aliens came down and were like, "What is a bow nerd?" I would immediately direct them to Kyle Davidson. Like you think out everything. I mean, you're an engineer, but like beyond even other engineers I talk to, you think about every little thing down to the smallest degree, and it's super, super cool. But I kind of want to open it up to see like what you want to talk about, because I mean, between the Arxos site, which I just got the Gen 2 prototype, I know Brax got one on the way, and then you just released those Saber Vanes 2 weeks ago. I mean, yeah, I'll kick it off to you. What do you want to talk about first?
yeah, so it's been crazy. Like we'll talk about the vanes a little bit, just because I'm really excited about that. So again, the same way that I got into archery, I was talking to other people. I'd even made a video on YouTube about vane noise not being important, and I ended up talking to, not to name drop, Donnie Vincent, that about vane noise, and we were just having a discussion about it, and kind of came up with an interesting analogy. As you know, AJ, I'm horrible, my horrible analogies, but when I was shooting in the video, I'd hear my bow, and then you'd hear the vanes, and then you'd hear it hit the target. And I was setting up my camera at like 70 yards and shooting at 100 yards. So I would aim at my phone and shoot past it to hear the vane noise. And then while I was talking to him, though, we came up with the idea that, like, when a girl's sitting, like in the old 90s movies, she's sitting in her couch and then she hears a floor squeak, and then she turns around and she's like, anything else that she hears, she's running for the door. And so we think that roughly, nobody really knows for sure, but that's kind of the analogy we went with of what was going on. So if an animal hears a bow and then they hear the arrow, then they're out of the way. And everybody knows that they move extremely quick. All these things do is eat and survive. That's their only task in life. So after he said that, I was just kind of curious, because I worked at a company where we made starters and alternators. And in that, you don't want to be driving and hear the whistle of the fan or anything like that, especially if you're like a bulldozer. We made heavy duty and light duty, and you don't want to hear the whistle of it. So I knew what made those quiet. And so I was like, I know how to do this. And so being the engineer, we always know exactly what we're doing at all times. I designed it up. I got some blanks made, and then I would cut the profile out. I would design it on my computer, print it, and then tape it to it, and then shoot it. And I was like, yeah, this is going to be super easy. Made it and shot it, and it was the loudest thing I've ever shot in my life. It was so noisy. And so I was like, oh, now I gotta know. And so from then on, it was just obsessed. And like I'm not like the smartest guy in the room by any stretch of the imagination, but when something is eating me, I have to find the solution to it. And so especially if it's just something you can work at and get done, it's like I can cut out profiles, I can test profiles. I can shoot them by my phone, and I can just see. I mean, it's like, yes or no, it's noisy or it's not noisy. And the vanes that I used for comparison were the Max Stealth. So those are, of all the vanes I've shot, and I've shot probably 30 different production profile vanes to get a background and a baseline for what I was doing. Max Stealth were the quietest I'd shot. So that was my baseline quiet vane, and then the Max Hunters are what I build with a lot, and they're both great vanes. AE makes great vanes, there's no doubt about it. But the Max Hunter is kind of what I build with a lot, and that was the one where I noticed noise. And so the noise of the Max Hunter, the Blazer is about the same. It's relatively the same. And I was like, well, maybe I could do better than that. So I went through I remember labeling vanes A through G, and then in those I would be like, well, if I change, B just a little bit and increase this or decrease that, maybe that'll do it. And I'd shoot that one. So it was like A through G, but there's 50 different, well, I don't say that, I want to exaggerate. There's maybe 5 different versions of each one. And then I had my shoes on, I had my bag packed, it was in the Jeep, I was ready to go, ready to move, and I watched more videos on like aerodynamics, way more than hunting videos. So I was like watching one and on the F100 Super Saber, and as I was watching it, I saw like the back tail section of the Super Saber, and I was like, that's an interesting idea. And so I was ready to go, print it out, cut them out of the blanks, mounted it on the arrow, and then left and shot it. And long story short, shot a bunch of them. And I would always go up and be like A, B, C, D, Max Hunter, Max Stealth, G, H, I, J, K, Max Hunter, Max Stealth. And then I'd come home, put on giant headphones, and listen to the differences. And the ones that I did that were kind of modeled after the Super Saber, super quiet. And I just freaked out, man. I mean, I was just like, holy crap. So once I found out that one was quiet, then I started diving into it to find out why it was quiet. So why is this vane, why is this profile unique, and why is it quiet? Once I figured that out, then I started looking at it to optimize that shape. So that one was quiet, but now, and the reason it works is way different than the tail fin of a plane. So everybody's seen kind of that, they call it a dorsal fin on a plane. It's very different than that, but it worked. And so there's another aerodynamic principle of why it worked. It's a double delta configuration. And so that's used on a lot of different aircraft, F-18s, the space shuttle, all that kind of stuff. It all functions similar to the way these work. And so I went through and ran computational fluid dynamics, which is basically the wind tunnel in your computer, and tested it. Yeah, they're there. Tested it to see, how I could optimize this shape for a broadhead, for a field point, for everything else. And yeah, I got them here too, TJ, thanks. But so once I did that, I ran them through the CFD, saw how the arrow was moving around it, optimized it for that shape, and then I pulled it into another program which they use to design rockets with. And so this is a program to calculate the stability of an arrow. They calculate the stability of rockets, and then you can also calculate the stability of an arrow. So when I talk about stability and I talk about why these are stable, like more stable than a Max Stealth, it doesn't mean the Max Stealth won't work. I'm not saying that. If you find a setup that you like, stay with it. Try my vanes, but stay with it. But yeah, these went through and I optimized it in the stability program. I'd go back to the computational fluid dynamics, the CFD, and kind of balance the two of them and then just keep working with that. And then I also have a wind tunnel. So I built a wind tunnel in my garage. It's a small one. It's not super scientific, but it's repeatable. So I can put different arrows in there, full-length arrows, shorter arrows, broadheads, field points, any vane configuration, all that stuff. It spins freely. It runs about 190 feet per second. So I can actually calculate the RPM of the arrows and compare it one vane versus another vane, 4 fletch, 3 fletch, 0 degrees, 5 degrees, all that kind of stuff, and get like a true comparison. So doing all that work and kind of looking at all that data is how I came up with the Super Saber profile. And when I did it, I actually talked to the molder, and TJ again was the one that was like, you got to do this, dude. And I was so blown away by the results that I was like, I think I will. And so did the mold, all that kind of stuff, ran them, got the first batch from the molder, and I was like, I remember opening the box and being like, I'm going to be seeing these for a while, but I'll use them on my builds and all that stuff. And they sold out in 26 minutes. And then I was like, holy crap. I called the molder up and I was like, make more now. And he's like, we'll try to get some in there for you. So he made another batch and I sold out of those in 8 minutes. And so I was like, make up a lot more. And so I made a lot more. I released those on Friday at noon and sold out of that one, which was a much bigger order than the first two. Sold out in less than an hour and a half on Friday at noon. So, yeah, man, they've been moving and people are loving them. Like I had a bunch of buddies shoot them, people that I knew would give me really good feedback, not just, yeah, they're great, I love them. Like you, AJ, I was like, tell me if you hate these things or not. Tell me what's wrong with them. And I did the same thing with a couple other guys like DIY Sportsman, TJ, and some other guys that we know. And I was like, shoot him, tell me why you hate him. What's wrong with them? What do I need to fix? And everybody was just like, no, man, they're ready to go. So I was like, all right, let's do it. And released them, and yeah, they've been selling like crazy now. It's just trying to get more in and figuring things out. Lancaster's also going to be selling them. So
Awesome.
I'll have the Vane Angle tool for sale at Lancaster, and also the Super Saber Vanes. So
Yeah,
So what
that
you're
Vane
saying is
angle
that it
tool-
wasn't just like, here's a cool shape, let's make this into some veins. It's
Yeah.
freaking scientific, thought of every aspect of everything. And I will say, when I got mine the other day, I threw them on my arrow, and I was very impatient with like letting the glue dry, so like they didn't stay on for very long.
Yep.
It was maybe like 30 minutes after I fletched them. But literally, one, I shot, and like I didn't really know what to expect. And I was just in my garage, nothing special. And I like wished I would have filmed it, because I was like, what the freak? Like I didn't hear anything. Like there's that distinct sound when you shoot that if you shoot a lot, you just get used to it and it's just normal. But I like shot, I'm like, that was something's wrong. Something happened. So I grabbed my other arrows and started shooting them, and they're, just a slight, I mean, it's only 5 yards, so it's not like it's like anything, but I 100% like heard that difference right out the gate. And I was like, he's onto something. This is dead.
So the funny thing is, so one of my buddies here, that actually, if I ever post anything where it's me shooting outside, it's my buddy Chad's land, Chad Huff. If you need hats or anything, look him up. But he lets me shoot out there, and then I also have access to shoot at 100 yards indoors. It's actually like the largest plant producer here in Indiana, and it's somebody that he grew up with. And so I don't do it often because it's a kind of a big ask to do it, but super nice guy, lets me do it anytime I want. I went out and shot him for the first time, and he was out there, and he was kind of messing around on his phone, and I was shooting Max Hunters inside, and so you can really hear the echo of everything. And I shot a couple Max Hunters at about 70 yards, and then I shot mine, and he was on his phone, and I'll never forget, because I shot, and he was kind of just right off there to the right of me, and I shot, and he instantly just like looks up, and he goes, "What happened?" And I was like, "Nothing, that was it." And he goes, "That was crazy, man." But it was like, he thought that I dry fired my bow was as loud as dry fire, but like, it was like something weird happened. And I was like, "Yeah, it's pretty cool, huh?" And he's like, "Make a bunch of those. They're going to sell like crazy."
Well, and this will segue into what I want you to talk about, but something else I want you to cover, because I've been, the one thing I've been pretty consistent with over the years has been my vane setup. And I know you and I always would go back and forth about this, because I was running for like 3 or 4 years now. I've been running a Blazer profile vane, the Easton Bully. So they're the heat material in a bully, in a Blazer profile, 4 fletch, 2.5 degree helical. And I ran those for so long because they were extremely forgiving. And when you explained to me, so I could mess around with different arrow setups, different broadhead setups, and as long as the arrow and the broadhead wasn't total crap, it was super forgiving. And one thing you explained to me, and something that a lot of people don't take into consideration and don't realize till they start putting their sight tapes on, is efficiency, and efficiency of the arrow and efficiency of the vanes. And why that setup for me was so forgiving was because I basically had a parachute on the end. And so for people that don't understand vane efficiency and how that plays into their tapes and things like that, can you break that down for people? Because I know this was something that, like, I've been getting a ton of questions about this as guys get ready for TAC.
Sure. Yeah. So there's 3 things you get from a vane, and there's ways that you can compensate for having an efficient vane. Is kind of what you're talking about. And so, use my little arrow here. But when you are shooting an arrow and you're looking for a vane, what a vane does is 3 things. Number one, it does create a little bit of drag, and I'll come back to that. The other thing that it does is it moves what's called the center of pressure of the arrow back. So everybody knows what the center of gravity of the arrow is. That's where the arrow rotates and everything rotates. So if you flip a hammer up in the air, the hammer's going to rotate around its center of gravity, which is by the head of the hammer. That's why it kind of flies when you do it. the arrow will still rotate about that center of gravity. So while it's flying in the air, that's where it's going to be rotating about. Anything that affects it, it's going to do that. The center of pressure is where, if the arrow is flying perpendicular to the way you shoot it, it's going to be pushed around so the point is in the front. The reason it does that is because of all the air pressure hitting it. If you could sum all those pressures into one point, that's your center of pressure. And so you want your vane, like that stability program I did, was to optimize the component center pressure of the vane to push it as far back as you can so that the difference from your center of gravity to your center of pressure is greater. That way you have more of a lever arm for that to work. And that's even more critical when you have a broadhead on the front of it, because when you put a broadhead on the front, it's basically like putting vanes on the front of your arrow. Like aerodynamically speaking, you're putting vanes on the front. So if you have the center of pressure further back, when you put that broadhead on the front of it, it's not going to pull it as close to that center of gravity. So you actually get more stability, which is the difference from the center of gravity to the center of that pressure. That was a lot. But the other thing that it does is rotate the arrow. So the easy one is, vanes are set, mine are offset at 2.5 degrees. We go into why that is, but it rotates the arrow, and it's not like a gyroscopic thing like a football, because the center of the center of rotation, I guess, is close to the axis. So there's no real weight outside of that axis. It's going to give you that gyroscopic, but it helps balance out any inaccuracies that you have with your arrow, and everybody does. I mean, so as it's flying, it's not like a giant curveball, because it's kind of spinning as it does that. So it evens that out.
Yeah, and one thing I really... Oh, sorry. Keep going, Kyle.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say something I noticed, and I mean, one of the things I really like about that is because of all that, you recommend running these in a 3 fletch, and I'm able to do that, which sounds ridiculous, but when you're fletching hundreds of arrows every year, right, 25% less vanes to put on adds up to a lot of time. That's for sure.
Yeah, everybody's like, should I run 4 or should I run 3? And I'm like, you only need to run 3. And on the back of the box, I have a lot of recommendations on it for how the configuration, what it's optimized for. These are optimized for 2.5 degrees. So like on the back of it, I actually have a picture of the CFD that as it was ran. I ran it special, so I didn't uncover any other secrets that I learned. But it also has kind of some of the stuff that I just talked about on there as well, what's important to an arrow, and then the application methods. And I want to come back to what you had said about them coming off in just a second. But everybody's like 3 or 4, and I'm like 3. And they're like, what if I want to run 4? And I'm like, you can, but you don't need to. I would run 3 if I was you. And they're like, why not? And I was like, 3 is all you need. I'm the one selling you the vanes, and I'm telling you to run less. It's like, if you want to run 12, great. I'd love it, man. But when you, like those 3 things of the rotation, the stability, the center of pressure, and the drag, if you put 4 on there, if you put 6 on there, or 12 on there, and you put a ton of offset on there, you're increasing that drag, and that's just going to hide the fact that your arrow isn't what it should be. And so, literally, if you took a full-size arrow and put a little parachute on the back of it and shot it, it would look like it's flying great because of that drag that's created behind the center of gravity. The problem is, though, that you're shooting out at something, and so you want speed, you want weight. And so if you have something that's inefficient, causing a lot of drag, then you're going to lose that down-range speed. So you're going to lose kinetic energy, momentum, everything. You're going to have more drop to your arrow. You're not going to be able to shoot as far. Shooting far is good. That way you can, if you shoot 100 yards, an animal at 20 yards is almost going to feel like it's touching the arrow. So it's that balance of the 3 of them that you're kind of looking for. And these actually work different than the Blazers or Max Hunters or anything like that. They use a lot of low pressure in their vanes to get that rotation and to get that center pressure moved and all that stuff, but mine work differently. The other thing is kind of filling in the air around it. So again, mine are all, the area is mainly in the back of it and up at the top. And if you look at it, it's a 2¼ inch long vane. It's the same height as a Blazer or Max Hunter, but this surface area here is actually less than a Blazer, which is less than a Max Hunter. So there's less surface area on the side of it, which means technically you have a little less drift, but it's a tough thing. I always am weird about drift because shooting out to 100 yards, if I'm shooting with my bow and it's windy, I'm more concerned with the wind blowing me around with my bow rather than the arrow moving. But yeah, that's kind of the thing. It's just if you add a lot of drag to it, you're going to hide the fact that maybe you have an inaccurate arrow or something. But
now you're a really good, and this is something we've talked a lot about over the years too, because you're an incredible arrow builder. Like you can take a 6,000 straightness arrow and get the absolute best out of it. Like some of the 6,000 straightness arrows you've built are superior to the match grade arrows that I'll put together, just because you understand spine indexing and all of the little details, and you're way more detail oriented than I have the patience for. So for guys that are maybe getting into, they're not ordering arrows for you, they're building their own arrows, maybe they're just getting into it, they're a little messier. Do you think it's worth them experimenting with a 3 and a 4 just to see to compensate for those imperfections in their arrow build?
Yeah, I mean, do what you got to do to shoot accurately. That's the thing. And like I've had people call me up and they're like, "Yeah, I just got my first bow and I wanted to get some arrows from you," and I'll tell them the best thing you could do is probably just go to the archery store, buy a handful of their arrows and shoot. I was like, "You're gonna lose arrows," and I tell them I lost arrows all the time when I started. Everybody does.
I lose arrows now. So
what's that?
I lose arrows now, so
I lose more than I like to admit because I mean I shoot different weight arrows. I shoot all kinds of different configurations. I'm shooting with the dialed sight, so I'm like, the Arxos sight to try to get the sit tape and all that stuff. So I mean I'm shooting 100 yards with arrows that are 50 grains heavier than the arrow that I normally shoot, and I'm pretty much guessing on where to hold. So I lose a few arrows, but yeah, it's a go shoot, get comfortable, get repeatable, and then give me a call. That's what I tell them. But as far as like a 4 fletch, 3 fletch, all that stuff, do what you got to do to get accurate arrows, and then as you progress, you'll learn more, you'll get more repeatable, and then you'll be able to do better. I tell people Jim Furyk's golf swing is horrible, but it works because it's repeatable. And so if you could get a good, you could anchor in the same spot, you could shoot at the same time, then everything's going to be cool. You just work on it and then get back to me. But yeah, I spine line all my arrows. I wrap them to that spine. I fletch off that spine. So everything is extremely consistent with my builds. There's like 3 grains different, the heaviest arrow to the lightest arrow. And then because of everything that we do to them and all the research I've done, I have a lab radar, which is another instrument that I use actually to develop those vanes. And what a lab radar allows people to do is I shoot out to 100 yards and I get 200 points of data all the way out to 100 yards, the speed, the time, the distance. So I can look at what the drag is with the arrow. That's why I run 2.5 degrees. I can see what the drag is of the arrow with vane, the profile, the number of vanes, the offset of the vanes, the weight, how the weight is affected by that, how the speed's affected by it. The heavier the arrow, the more weight it'll have or the more speed it'll have when it gets there. It'll lose less speed is what I'm trying to get to. Lighter arrow loses more speed on the way out there, but there's a break-even point there where, if you're shooting 60 yards, you'll have a faster arrow. You don't want to have a super heavy arrow because it'll never get up to speed kind of thing. So I've done all kinds of research into that, and that's part of what I do when I do my builds is find out what people are going to be doing with the arrow and then custom make that arrow for what they're doing. But like the straightness of the arrow, I don't think makes much difference to it. Like the difference between a 5,000 straightness arrow and a 1,000 straightness arrow is literally human hair. Human hair is roughly 4 thousandths. And so, when you look at the length of the shaft, it's a hair different on this end than it is on that end. And I can't shoot that well, and I would really like to see somebody that could. I know that people say they can. I build arrows for guys that are like, I want a match grade axis because I got to have a match grade axis. And it's like, I like red. I got to have red on there or something. That's fine. It's whatever you want, man. I mean, it's a hobby. It's what people do for fun. And I encourage people to do the things that they want to do. So if shooting an 001 is what you like to do, then do it. Shoot 4 fletch. I like orange, so a lot of mine have orange on them. But
are you going to come out with different colored ones?
Yeah.
Big question right there.
Yeah. So in the works are different color vanes. The next ones that I'm going to do are fluorescent green, fluorescent orange, and black. but I'm trying to get enough of the white out now. Working with the molder to increase the number of cavities, because this was only a 2-cavity mold, thinking that we didn't need 4, and now it's like we're looking at 6. It's like now and fast. And so working to get caught up on the white, and because I built so many arrows, I know what color most people like to run, and so white is by far the number that most people like. But there's other guys out there that like the knock-on guys that like to shoot fluorescent green, and I like orange, but I shoot white, and then there's other stuff like that. So yeah, black. I think black would look good. This is actually a wrap that I haven't. You've seen this, AJ, but so this is a wrap I just did that I'll have on my site. It actually says, this one says Davidson on it in yellow, but it'll say Super Saber on it, and then it's actually just kind of a one that I did that kind of matches the Thunderbirds, if you remember that.
Yep.
The Air Force flying team. And so I have a picture of the F-100 Super Saber with the Thunderbirds livery on it. So I was like, I wonder if I could do that. It's just kind of one of those things you start at 11 o'clock at night, and then, at midnight you're like, I better go to bed, but that's pretty sweet. So I'll get those up there, and then, I'll try to get more colors and trying to come up with all kinds of stuff for it. I'd like to have shirts and things like that with the profile on it, just because it's so cool. But, the design was form following function 100%. Like, I don't care what they would have turned out looking like, because I was doing it as an exercise in, letting me sleep at night. So whatever it needed to look like, I was going to do. My things that I was fixed on, though, because if you don't have a deadline on something, you can set very hard limits for yourself. One, it had to be quiet, it had to be stable, and the other one was a primer pin. I didn't want to have to use a primer pin, but you can use a primer pin. So if you're having trouble with them sticking, the glue that I recommend is Loctite 401. It's on the car. Get it from Amazon. You can get it for like $5. There's some that comes from China. It's fine to use, but that's what I use. And I actually include an alcohol wipe with them. So it's a little prep pad that you can wipe the bottom of the vane with. Because these are individually molded, the material is awesome. It sticks insanely good to cyanoacrylate glue or crazy glue. And the problem is, though, when you shoot something into a mold, it automatically, all the oils kind of go to that surface. So that prep pad will wipe that off, and then the 401 is crazy good glue, and it'll hold that on there. But if you're, like I talked to Steve Anderson, ATA, and was telling him about him, and he was like, I got to use a primer pin, man. I just got to. It's part of my... It's what I do. It's what I do. And I was like, yeah, you could use it then. And with the primer pin, it takes a lot of the other glues work better with it. So you could use it if you want to, and if not, you don't have to. But that was it. The primer pin, being quiet, being stable, and it had to retain its shape. So like, I would take these and just put them on my desk and put a weight on it so they would flatten out. And then I'd come back the next day and make sure that they pop back into shape. That was big to me. So they're a little heavier than I wanted them, but I wanted that thickness in order to get the durability and also get the retention of the shape in them. So,
yeah, I actually shot this one through a target about an hour ago, and it's already popped back. So, yeah, I use mine just because you sent me some to experiment with and kind of see like what is the average idiot going to try and do with these things. So I was using I use a primer pen for some, none for others. You and I get our wraps are made by the same people. So on our wraps, I didn't have any issues, and I was using the AE glue. So I know a lot of guys have those bottles laying around, so that works just fine too. But what's nice about using that Loctite, and I haven't used it yet personally, but I know that you can get it at any hardware store, which is the other nice thing.
The 401 you can't. So that's
never mind then. I take that back.
Yeah. So no problem. When I was doing this, like, the material I wanted, I was very specific on what properties I wanted. And so because of my background, and I'm a mechanical engineer, like I said, I talked to a few people, and then I ended up finding a guy in my neighborhood that was a rep for a plastics company for years and years and years. Talked to him, and he was like, who you should talk to is this guy. And that guy was like, dude, that's cool. He was a hunter as well. And he's like, you got to talk to Matt up in Wisconsin. I was like, let me talk to Matt. So I talked to Matt. Matt's like, you got to use this material. I told him everything I wanted. He's like, use this. And I was like, that's what I was looking at using. He's like, yes. He's like, do you know anybody at Loctite? And I said, no. And he said, I got a buddy in Loctite, San Francisco. Let me get you his number real quick. And so everybody was like, helping me out with this. And I think it's good to have, I'm sure their day isn't filled with a lot of, it's probably a lot of, I want to make this thing. It's just something people are going to throw away. It's a part of a printer or something like that. And so to get something like this, they're like, yeah, this is cool. I'm down. And he still calls me to find out how things are going with it. But for the adhesion, I posted this on my stories, but this one I shot through a Lancaster box. No knock on Lancaster, but shot through a Lancaster box 12 times. So it went through the front and the back. So it's been through 24 layers of cardboard, and it's just a little bit, like this one's just a little bit strange, but the adhesion is still there, and that's what that Loctite 401, like I said, snag it off of Amazon, or, you're welcome to use a primer pin with these, but I didn't want that to be a requirement. So, yeah, I still want to shoot this one more through just to see how many times it'll take.
Shoot it through the Lancaster catalog and see if it survives that.
Yeah, well, I watch another YouTube channel, Top Later Mouse, and they shoot into magazines that are like wet magazines, but it's like, a couple feet thick, and I've always wanted to try that, but I don't think an arrow would just get through it, so maybe another time. Maybe when we all get together for ATA here in Indianapolis sometime.
There you go.
Yeah, the glue I used, I went to, my AAE was dried up, so I needed new glue because it'd been a while since I'd fletched anything. And ran over to Sportsman's Warehouse. They had no glue at all. So I'm like, frick, what the heck do I go? So I go to Walmart. I go to Archery section. I always checked because Walmart usually has the most random things, and I'll make random videos on archery stuff there. I looked, and there was an Allen glue. I'm like, let's try it, and let's just say it wasn't very good. It did not, like, usually all the other glues I've used, like, they'll glue my fingers together, after 10 seconds of holding my fingers together. It was more like oily almost. It was really weird. I don't know what it's made of, nor would I even understand what it would be made of if I read the ingredients.
The 401 is really, really good glue, and it sets extremely fast. So when you do it, you put the vane in the clamp, wipe the bottom with the alcohol pad, or, those are just 70% isopropyl alcohol, so everybody has their little jug they use to kind of clean things up with. You can use that too. I just included those to have something there. I actually looked at including the 401, but in order for me to get a little tube of 401, it was going to be like $20, and so I was like, it's cheaper to buy it on Amazon than to buy it, I was going to buy hundreds of them, and I couldn't get it down, so, but wipe the bottom really good with that alcohol pad, and then I run over it with a dry one because I'm impatient, and then put the 401 on there. All you need is just enough so you can look down in a light and see that it's all wet. That's all you need. And then put it on there, hold it on there for 7 seconds, and then take it off, and then wipe it. And that's all you have to do. It's so fast, man. But that glue is no joke. It'll glue everything together, and keep your jig clean too. Keep your jig clean. Yeah.
This is always a popular question. Do you do the drop of glue in the front and the back of the vane as well?
No, the tail and tip, I don't, just because I've done so many of them that I don't. I try to keep all my builds really clean as well. Obviously, the main thing is the function. It has to work, period. If there's a little glue on it, it doesn't break my heart, but I try to keep everything clean. And then as long as you get the whole base covered, and it's all, got a little bit on it, you shouldn't need to tip a tail on.
Awesome. Yeah, Kyle, you mentioned this I'll segue us over to the next product I'm excited to talk to you about, but you mentioned form follows function. So you're part of the engineering team, TJ being the other big half of the Dialed Arxos. So it's been really cool working with you guys over the last year and getting to see that project evolve, because I know you're uncompromising on function, and TJ, being an engineer, is also that way, but he's very much form-minded as well. But give us some insight into some of the stuff. I know that you have been working on some of that third axis development on that, and some of the other things that you've been working on.
Yeah, so TJ and I work together at the company I currently work at as a mechanical engineer, and he did industrial design. So they would come up with the outside of something, and then they would give it to us, especially in R&D. Again, I work in research and development, and so he would come up with a brand new look of something, and then I would try to make that something work. And it was very complicated because there was electronics in it. It was very ergonomic, very flowing and everything. So, fitting a square, flat circuit board in something that's organic looking is really tough. But TJ and I worked really well in that. We traveled a few times together for work and had a great time hanging out and everything. So TJ is like the industrial designer, so the look of how something works, and then a little bit into the engineering, and then I'm in the engineering and then big into the engineering. So the way we've been describing is I'm the lead engineer on it. I'm doing all the CAD prints of it, everything like that, tolerancing, making sure things work, and then, but together we do a good job of just hammering out ideas, because I'm more of the practical, I'm thinking of how it's going to be done, and he's like the, I want it to look like this, and it's got to do this and this, and it's got to have the rounds on it, and it's got to be thin, it's got to be little, it's got to be thin, and I'm like, no, it's got to be bigger, that kind of story. So I'm more of the engineer, he's more of the industrial designer, but he's more of an engineer than he will claim. He's a great engineer. Grew up kind of doing that. He's from northern Indiana, and I'm from Noblesville in Indiana. And so we actually, when we did the site, we actually met at a Starbucks in Kokomo, Indiana, and just showed up there, took over a corner of the store multiple times, and we got a bunch of competitive sites, and we just sat down with them, and the first thing we said was, I hate all of these. I mean, we both just sat there and looked at it, and we were like, I hate all this. I hate it. It all looks like a stupid microscope, like all the knobs and buttons and, blah, blah, blah. It's just things hanging off of it. Looked horrible. Looked like a microscope. So we would, look at one, and we'd be like, what do you like about this? I don't like that, I don't like that, I don't like that. I don't really like any of it. And so we basically started with a blank sheet of paper. And he had already had the idea. I have one here. He had the idea, for the void in the middle of it, which is kind of a TJ trademark. But he had the idea of the outside of it, and then he actually brought me in, and he loves the story. TJ called me up and he said, hey, I'm working with a site company, and when I got into archery because of him, we'd always talked about making a new site and what we would do differently. The site was like the first thing we ever talked about, and he was like, I'm working with a site company. I was like, oh, that's sweet. And he goes, would you have a couple hours to kind of take a look at something? And I said, yeah, I could take a look at it. And he goes, how much would you want to look at it? And I was like, no, I'll look at it, no big deal. And he goes, well, it might be a couple more than an hour or so. And I was like, huh? And it's like, well, okay, you could pay me this much. He's like, all right. And now I'm the lead engineer for the company. So it's like, he lured me in, and then it was on. I mean, it was just like, they had a really good idea. They had a really good destination and all that stuff, but they needed somebody to get the small engineering details. So that's why I got pulled in. But yeah, he had the idea for the outside of it, and kind of the slant and the void and all that stuff. That was all him. When I walked in, it did look like this. My contributions were kind of the lock mechanism on it. When we were looking at the competitive sites, it was like, trying to do it with your eyes closed. You could find the knob, then you'd adjust the knob, then you'd have to find the knob in order to tighten it, and your hand kind of moves from where it naturally is. So we thought, man, it would be cool. We just literally had one, and we were like, where would we want to do it? And if you could just, move your finger over a little bit and push it down, and it's locked, that's it. And then when you go to adjust it, and you're getting ready to, it's locked, you just put your thumb underneath it, push it up, and then now you can adjust it. So it was like, where is it convenient? Where would you intuitively go to in order to make it happen? And then on top of that, we just started going crazy with ideas. Like, I had moved my bubble up to the top of my sight when I was shooting, just because, when you're shooting, and especially when you're shooting at an animal, like my hand was an animal, you don't care what's above that. Like up here, you're not interested in. And so having a bubble that was covering up most of what you wanted to see never made any sense to me. But, I'm new to archery, and so I kind of walked in with those eyes going, why is it that way? And then everybody goes, I don't know. So we did it our way. It's like, we're not trying to copy anybody or do anything. we're creating our own mold and going our own direction. Even like we just changed the new one that you got. The
I'll grab that. Yeah.
We went through that, and I kind of found a little trick to that, and now it works really well. I mean, it's super bright and it's not very big, but you get a ton of light through it. And then I don't remember whose idea it was, but there's a pin at the bottom. So there's a pin at the top you kind of set your tape to, and then there's the stub XR at the bottom. And so on mine, it's like 20 and 41 is kind of where it's at. And I'm normally shooting a 4-pin, but now I'm good with this 2-pin because I have that distance that I can range things to, and I love it, man. Plus, I never have built arrows for somebody that said I want to shoot shorter. Everybody's like, man, I'd like to shoot out this far. And so we're not trying to encourage anybody to take any unethical shots, but it's fun to shoot long distances. And so, going out with your buddies and shooting tack events or just shooting for a beer, late at night with your nocturnals, let them fly, it's fun. So that gives people the opportunity to be able to shoot further than they normally can. And it's freed up because there's no bubble at the bottom of it. So it all kind of just ideas that we dump in, and it's like, yeah, we can do that. Why not? We don't have any preconceived notions on sites, and we're here to shake things up. So let's do it.
Well, and one of the things I really liked about having the bubble on top is it's a lot more intuitive when lining up, at least for me and mentally, and how my process is, before, I think the classic kind of thing was you line up your sight housing and your peep, right? Then you check your bubble. And the thing about having the bubble lower is it's usually shrouded, right? Like it's not as bright, which brings me to my little contribution to the site was I was like, can you guys make a hole so that this adjustable light thing also adjusts how much light is going to the level? But also what's super cool and intuitive about having the level there is you can just float that circle bubble over your pin like a lowercase I, and it's just much more intuitive to keep that bubble focused where it is versus when it's down lower and it's kind of dark, it's got the pin behind it, it's harder to make out. Now you've got a nice bright bubble that's just centered over your pin.
Yeah, it's really cool too. Like you said, the ring that's on the outside is actually the same ring that holds our fiber in, and having it all kind of tied with the bubble in front of it is that when you cover that up, it gets dimmer, and then when you show it, it gets brighter. Just the level does, and so it's everything kind of fell into place when we moved that up. It was just like TJ came up with the idea for the ring and how the mag all holds together and all that stuff, and it was just like, I mean, it's like shaking it up, you dump it out, and it just everything fell into place. It was really cool,
and it actually works. A lot of the, I mean. I won't rip on any specific company, but there's a lot of companies that have systems for making pins brighter and darker, and they don't actually do anything. So
there's a big fundamental flaw with a lot of the sites out there. Like we have a bunch of them, and I can go through them, and it's like with the Vane, I figured something out, that they were doing that's killing their light. So we took a lot of steps to make sure that we weren't going to be doing that, and tried to use as little as we could, just because you don't want, just from a form factor, you don't want to see a bunch of stuff like that. So again, trying to make everything as robust as possible, and there's the only thing that hangs off is the rail, and there's nothing you can really do about that. There's a debate going how much we could take off that, and I don't know if we can, but I'm saying an inch, but there's a lot of guys that are saying we can't. So we're leaving it for now, but we might be able to make that a little bit smaller. But there's not a lot that you don't have to have in order to make that thing work. So no levers, no hang off things. We have our micro adjust and our macro adjust on there. Makes it super easy to set up. I take mine on and off all the time, and I take it apart all the time. And so everything's messed up on it. But when I go shoot, I'm literally shooting in 2 minutes. You could be shooting this thing and be on paper easily. It's just so easy to adjust and intuitive to adjust.
It is. It's for sure the easiest to set up site that I've worked with. Like that's one of the things. And of course, once you get a site set up, it's more or less set up. But yeah, they're just, as far as like ease of use, it's just all very intuitive. Everything clicks. There's a knob where you want it to be. You're not knocking knuckles on things like with a lot of sites. It's super, super cool. And Brax, I'm sorry to be just rubbing this all in your face
Dude,
right
it's
now
so
while you're
painful.
on the road.
Oh, good.
I was texting Scott the other day, and he was like, "Dude, you're on the list." I'm like, "Thanks, but I really want it right now."
Yeah. I actually personally built the mag for AJ's Thursday.
Oh,
I think.
that makes me like this even more then.
Yeah, and then I think TJ put together the frame on it because we kind of had it separated. We had another guy helping us out, Russell helping us out, and then me and TJ, and I was doing more of the mag, running the fiber and all that stuff, and he was doing the build. So and then Taylor and Scott and Jordan on the phone nonstop with us, asking what was going, how things were going, sending us pictures, It was hard to get anything done because they were just so excited about seeing everything come together. And honestly, we had issues where holes didn't come tapped from a prototype that we had made, and some of those were prototypes. It was just quicker to get those done rather than full production. And holes weren't tapped and all that stuff. But man, if the holes would have been tapped, we would have been able to knock out a ton of those just in that one day. So we're super excited about it, how fast it's coming together, and there's more work to do on it, and we're constantly evolving it. That's something that, with the fiber on it, we had an idea that we were running with, and I kind of stumbled onto something, and yeah, we tried it because why not? And it worked really well. So, as we keep going on this thing, if we find cool ways to do something else, we either adapt it or there's a list running for future projects. So. We all have ideas on other things, but I mean, this site is just ridiculous, man. I mean, I freaking love shooting it. That's a testament because as an engineer, all I do is just think about how things can go wrong and then try to fix those before they become problems. But with this site, man, it's fun. It's so fun because all the guys are super cool. TJ's like my brother. Scott and Taylor and Jordan are all basically cousins because they live in a different state, but they're quickly becoming brothers. Me and Scott get along extremely well. We're like the polar opposites, where I'm the nerdy, mechanical, by the numbers engineer. He's a salesperson. Normally, they're different, but man, we get along really well. Movie quotes, I think, is how we're bonding on that. But
well, we talked to Scott about that, and that's definitely one of the. I mean, I think that's like a lesson for everybody trying to get into the industry. Also, is you and I knew each other going years back. I think we just through social media,
yeah.
And it was crazy because I got looped in through another mutual friend that. We became internet friends, just as you do. The algorithm blesses you with certain people, and that's why it's important what you click on, people. But I got looped in, and and kind of sight unseen, it was like hey, are you in or you out? Like no details, anything. But I knew who was involved, and then I later found out you were involved, and it's just crazy. And then now pulling Braxton, and we were talking about a podcast, like just the entire crew, like all of this coming together is just very, very cool, and it. It goes to show, I think a lot of people look at, certain top names in the industry and, their little crews and stuff, and it's like, oh, I want to be a part of that. It's like, well, no, make your own crew, and, you guys grow, and that the rising tide lifts all ships kind of deal. And it's crazy to see, it's crazy to see where things are going and getting to work on something like this, when a couple of years ago, we were all just posting stuff like idiots, not knowing what we were doing. So yeah.
Well, I remember how we met because my house flooded.
Oh, that's right.
Destroyed my house. They had to rebuild everything, including I'm in my basement right now. My son kicked me out from upstairs, but it was I was in the hotel. We had to stay in a hotel for 4 months while they rebuilt my house, and I remember just scrolling through Instagram and seeing your pictures, and I was like, dude, those are sick. And it was just it's just a picture of a bow, but it's so good. And, you see pictures of bow all the time. It's just bows and arrows and blah, blah, blah. But yours are so clever and, clean, and it's a new look. And I was like, that's awesome. And then I don't remember how we started talking, but then started talking about wraps or something like that. And I was like, oh, hell yeah, I can do some wraps for you. And I was like, this guy wants me to make wraps for him? And then, we just became friends. And then when we started the site, I was talking to the guys, And I actually mentioned your name. I was like, you know who we should really get on this is AJ. And they were like, oh yeah, we already are. And I was like, hell yeah, then. Hell yeah. You know, it's like somebody that knows sites, that's seen a bunch of sites. I want this in their hands, and I want them to be able to see it and use it and, you know, give us that good feedback. Like with the vane that I wanted, you know, it's like, use it, tell me what's wrong with it. We want to fix problems. We just want to make the coolest site out there, and want everybody to be able to use it and have fun with it. And it's a different world now. There's I tell people, like with TJ's design, you know, they also do Half Rack, which is another company where they sell bow accessories and other hunting accessories. But it's not like just other hunting accessories. Like you see, they have a rifle bag, and TJ told me they were doing one, and I was like, yeah, but I mean, it's just a rifle bag. It's like, you know, everybody makes them. They're black. They're blah blah blah. It's a rifle bag. They all look the same. And then he was like, yeah, we're just trying to do something a little different with it. And I saw it, and I was like, dude, that is wicked. I mean, it's like, it's a stone gray with the orange on it. Yeah, there you go. It's like, dude, that's awesome. But
we're going to make sure that they sponsor this episode after that shot.
Yeah. He would do that to me all the time at my day job when he worked there. And he'd be like, let me see it. I got to add the round. I want to change the round, and I want to do this round. And I was like, it's not going to make any bit of difference, dude. In my head, I'm just like, seriously again? Then I'd see it, and I'd be like, it's rad. Right.
No, it's awesome. It is awesome.
Yeah, he's a great designer, super talented. I mean, like, probably one of the best designers, I think, in the industry right now. I'd be hard-pressed to see somebody that's better than he is right now.
Yeah, it's cool to see what they're doing, because they're taking classic things that, like, we all need when we go hunting, and just putting a new modern spin and little, same thing you guys did with the dial, just on a different level, just, you know, like little features that we were all like, this would make our lives so much easier. But we've just had the same stuff out for years and years, and you become nose deaf to just like you get so used to doing workarounds that you forget to like think about, well, this could be better. Because you get so used to how things have always been, sort of deal. But
yeah, and it's I mean, it's, you know, we meet and we have honest, open conversations, and like we make fun of each other. Most of our calls are half of it making fun of each other. I mean, I'm 45 years old, so most of the guys are like 30 or under, and especially in our crew. I mean, Jack, I think at ATA was 19, and I was just like, man, I feel old. So, you know, there's a lot of old jokes and all that kind of stuff. And we just have a great time doing it. So it makes, you know, having conversations about, whoa, we got to get this done, we got to get this done, it makes those conversations a lot easier, because you can just be open with people. And I've been in environments in work where, you know, you have to be careful with somebody's feelings and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, there is a point to that. You know, you don't want to openly offend anybody, but also knowing, like, if any of those guys said something, or you or any of you guys said something to me, I would know you were joking and that you weren't being malicious. And that's a big thing to have with that crew. And seriously, it's just fun. It's fun to be in the meetings and everything like that. It's a ton of work. I've spent a ton of late nights. Like the night before we went up and built, I got about 4 hours of sleep because I was trying to finish drawings and things like that. And then, as some of you know, my son's been sick, and so he's been in hospital lately, and so you know, there's a lot of me getting things done at a certain time, but then, you know, they pick up the slack of it. I'm like, TJ, I got to go to the hospital tomorrow night, which I do, and then I got to, like, you know, do this and this and this. It's like, I'll do that, you do this, you get this and this done, and I'll do that, and that. And I was like, awesome, you're the man. So yeah, just good guys to work with, very accommodating with everything we're doing, and just a good product. It's easy when things are good and you're doing them for the right reasons.
Yeah, so, absolutely.
What's
go ahead, Brad.
Oh, no, you're good. You go, AJ.
No, I was going to backtrack to a different DCA product that I think a lot of people overlook is field points when it comes. I think a lot of people. So you've got your subsonics. I know you've got another profile as well, but this is something that, like, I get super preachy about with people, because I think a lot of people tend to just buy, they cheap out on their field points, and then they wonder why they're not grouping as well as they should, and I think they really discount like how much of an impact that a field point can actually have on an arrow.
Yeah. So this was, again, like with everything I do, I just stumble into it and then obsess over it. And I don't, like, I'm trying to do less work because I have too many jobs right now, but I just end up doing something. And what I did on these was ran the same kind of computational fluid dynamics on it. So I ran it through a simulated wind tunnel on my computer, and I already knew that like the optimal shape for subsonic flight, which all arrows are, is kind of that rounded. It's a long ellipse, and so if you look at like any 747 or anything like that, they have a big round nose on it because that's kind of the optimal shape for that flight characteristic. And if you're going supersonic, then you want it super pointy. You could look at bullet rounds, like a 300 Blackout. It's rounded at the front. If it was pointed and it would do better, they would do it like with a plane. If they made the front, if they could make the front of the plane pointed and save, 0.0001% of gas, they would do it in a second. So what I did with these is kind of that same thing where I just wanted the most optimal shape. And it was just an experiment for me to figure out how to do it. And if I could do it, if I could get down to 100 greens and still not compromise the shape and all that. So this one, like the air that it hits it, it actually stays connected to the arrow nice and cleanly. You don't get like the weird blowouts and low pressure around the front of it or anything like that. And what happens when you do that is when you get the low pressures hanging out here, it'll move the arrow around a little bit. And a lot of people are trying to, I want to simulate the front of a broadhead, the drag of a broadhead. I've actually, ran broadheads and field points in the CFD, and I've also ran them with my lab radar, so shooting out to distance. And you just can't simulate well enough, I don't think, a broadhead with a field point. It's like when you're looking at drag, it's all frontal area. So when you look at the front of it, that's a big characteristic of it. And then the CD of it is how well that shape gets through the air. So when you look at a broadhead, it automatically has a lot more area to it. And so you just can't get there with a field point. So the idea that I had was just get as clean a flight as you can, as perfect a flight as you can, shoot these, and then shoot your broadheads with them and try to match your perfect baseline with the field point. The other thing that I did, again, didn't find out until I was out on the range, but they're round, so you could put them in your pocket and they won't poke through your pants as hard. You're not going to pull them out of the target. I've done the thing where I pull them out of the target and then I didn't want my arm to go flying back, so I'll pull it out and then I go back, and I'm like, oh God, I'm going to stab myself. They're not super dull, but they're not going to hurt your hand or anything. So, and it kind of slows it down as it goes into the target, but it's basically just for the flight. The other thing is they're all stainless steel, and so my OCD when I would shoot regular field points that were steel was they would rust. And you shoot, the target's wet or it's raining a little bit out, you shoot in the grass, the arrow gets wet, and then you put it in your quiver. When you put it upside down, all the water runs down to that field point, and it would just rust. And so you pull one out, it would be rusty, and you'd be like, I wonder if that weighs 100 grains now. It's like, or has the right structural stability to it, or that point's going to break off in something or something like that. So these will never rust. I have a bag that I actually started when I was in the hotel that far back, that I put one of these in, and every now and then it's a Ziploc bag. I'll just add a little water to this paper towel that's in there. It's never rusted. It looks brand new, and it's been for years in there. I have another one that was a field point, and it just got too nasty. I had to throw it away. It was completely rusted out. It looked like a toothpick. But yeah, so these are out there and not super expensive. They're like $19.50 now for the 100 grain. And then I have 125, which are just like, it's just a little bit longer. There's another cylinder that's added at the back of it there to get the 125. They're on my website too, for sale.
That's something I've totally overlooked. I've always bought in the generic, cheap as can get field tips.
That everybody buys, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I never even thought about that. Like, I would have thought that the more pointy and sharp it is, the better aerodynamic it is. But you bring up the airplane, that totally makes sense.
Yeah. Well, and a lot of people shoot those points too. I mean, I think the reason they got popular too was, one, they're cheap, but two, if you're 3D, guys will claim it helps you grab lines.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that's true or not. I've never like experimented, but I guess the shape of the field point can push the surface of the target and help you grab like, which at that point like I mean as hunters it doesn't matter, but I guess if you're like super obsessed with 3D, I could see how somebody might freak out over that.
They are fairly pointed. They're just not super pointed. But I know that the other thing with 3D is they want, if you shoot and somebody's on, they want to shoot and just bury it in the back of somebody's arrow if they're 12, and you need to be in there too. You don't want it to glance off or something like that. But I've Robin Hood these a couple times. That's why I shoot, like on my arrows, I shoot pin knocks, just because I shoot a ton and I'm not always focused on where I'm shooting, so I'll just keep shooting for the center at something, and they've saved me a couple times. I don't know if they're actually worth it or not. I've just always done it, so I kind of just keep doing it. But yeah, I've never... the other thing is you could shoot, and it helps save your veins a little bit, because if you don't Robin Hood it, everybody's done the thing where they shish kebab a vein. Well, it hit. I have no idea how this happens. It hits, and then it sticks the vein, rips the vein off and sticks it to the target. I've done it a million times, and I can't think of how that happens. But with these, I have had way less. I think I might have done it once or twice, but before with the other points, I would just rip veins off all the time. Now it just kind of hits and glances off of it and keeps on going. But yeah, so this was actually, I think this was the first product I had. And then the vein angle tool, and then the Super Sabers. But by far, the Super Sabers are kind of biggest one that are getting the most attention, and I just want to tell everybody that I'm doing everything I can to get as many in as I can. I feel like a jerk for not having them. I'm not trying to like drive up demand or anything like that. It's literally, it caught every single person by surprise. Me, the molder, everybody were just blown away, and I couldn't appreciate the support more. It's like I'm a huge nerd. I'm a complete introvert, but when I talk about arrows, I could talk for hours, as you know, AJ. But like when I did these, it was literally just me sitting in there and my computer and modeling it so it was perfect, and then running it in CFD, and then going back to the stability program, and then doing this, doing that, and then I was like, well, here, I'm a nerd. This is what I've been working on, and everybody was like, that's awesome, and I was like, really? I was like. Now I get a wedgie or something get shoved in my locker. Is that what happens? But it was like, no, those are super cool. And I was like, yeah, it's hard for me to believe that, but I've blown away, and I truly appreciate all the support. And I have ideas for other veins and lower profile veins, things like that. I also have a patent that I wrote that's 7 pages on these things. So got them locked up, but the other vein that I'm looking at, it'll take time to do, and I just don't have the time right now. But there will be other stuff, and along with that, I have other ideas that, I don't know if it's revolutionary or not, but new things I'm kind of coming up with all the time that I just need time to work on. So more stuff is coming. And then Dialed is just another outlet for that. I mean, TJ's super creative, Scott, Taylor, Jordan, they're all super creative, but it's just another outlet where it's like, I won't have the opportunity to do that because I wouldn't want to make my own site. It's just too much for one person. And so I have other ideas that I want to do on that, and it's just another outlet to be kind of creative on. That's what fuels the whole team over at Dialed. So it's fun.
So how many hours are in your day? Because it sounds like you found the cure of just 24 hours in one day.
Yeah, it depends. Kind of a problem, but I think about this stuff all the time. And I mean, like with the veins, I would wake up at night, and I know people say that, but like there was literally weeks where I had issues not sleeping enough because I would wake up at night thinking about it, and like had to figure things out and figure out a way that I could actually sleep at night and not think about that stuff. It just drove me crazy. Like I said, I'm not a smart person, but I'm just determined. And if it's something that I could just test and test and test, and I have tools to be able to monitor that testing, because you can't just go out and have 9,000 variables and hope to figure it out. You have to control everything and have one variable. All the control is one variable. Modify that variable. Figure out if that variable is the key or not. Like, I thought the back of the vane was the key to the noise. It's not. But I went through a big checklist of, what if I do this? What if I do that? What if I have this shape or that shape? It didn't do anything to it. The whole key to it was the front of it, and that's kind of how I ended up here. And then again, just optimize that shape. I mean, this is the angle, the height of this, the radius that's in there, the radius at the top, the angle of this, the angle of the top of it, and the angle of the back of it. I can talk for multiple hours just about every dimension. Like, the top of this is not flat. The reason it's not perfectly flat with the axis of the arrow is because when I ran it in the CFD, I noticed that as the air came around the top of it, it created a little bit of a low pressure just right here at the top of the vane. So I put an angle on it just a little bit until that low pressure went away and the air was just smooth across the top of it. And it probably made no difference at all, but it was like, if you have the tools to do something perfectly, I have to do it that way, you know? So it was just like figuring that out and getting it done. But yeah, every dimension on there is optimized for field points and ultimately broadheads. If it steers a broadhead, it'll steer a field point fine. And like I said, I learned a lot, not only with the vane, but just the aerodynamics of an arrow and how unaerodynamic an arrow is. But I learned about 3 or 4, I think, pretty big things about it, and I'm trying to, I have a bunch of ideas for things on how to use those ideas. So it's new stuff. I mean, old ways of thinking are not true. If somebody tells you you have to shoot 20% FOC, I can sit down with a piece of paper and show them why they're wrong. And they can't argue with me, they can argue with NASA on, literally, it's rocket science on how the stability of an arrow works. I'm not saying that the way people did things or the way certain people are saying things is wrong, but it's like, it's not correct. There's a gray area there where you could be in, but it's just math, was what I came up to. In my day job, I can't go in and say, I feel really good about this design. They would say, show us some graphs and charts, the normal nerdy stuff, Kyle, we need proof. And so I don't go into an argument without having data to back it up, just because I don't have the self-confidence to be able to sell something I don't believe in or doesn't work.
I learned more about arrows and anything to do with the components of an arrow in the last hour than I have in the last 15 years of shooting.
I'll tell you what, TJ and I were driving back from Wisconsin, and we were talking about arrows, talking about the vanes and all that stuff, and TJ's a technical person, but he's not I love this stuff, and so that's why I can talk nonstop about it. And he's super smart. He'll deny it to the end, but he's a super smart guy. I just went through everything with him about some of the dynamics of the arrow that I learned about. And not just aerodynamics, but the mechanical properties of an arrow in flight and all that kind of stuff. Went through the whole thing with him while he was driving. I just kept talking and using my hands and all that stuff and talking this and that and blah, blah, blah. And I just went for 2 hours. And he just was sitting there driving and nodding his head, and he was just like, dude. That was all he said to me. It was just I didn't know if that was I'm impressed or we need to get out more. I think it was about 50-50. I'm hoping that's what it was. But it was just I think about this too much, man. And I was like, it's a fun thing because it's so freaking complicated. And arrow flight is so complicated. And I know that, Native Americans have been doing this forever and shooting things close and all that stuff. But I think taking it way beyond that is it's fun because it's so complicated. And if we could do it better, to improve what we're doing now, shooting 100 yards and trying to be accurate for a TAC event and, hopefully appear with your buddy, then let's do it. That's what I say. It's interesting to me, and that's why I pursue it so crazily.
And that's the
awesome.
super cool thing about archery and bow hunting, right? Is that it's that combination of things. I always compare it to race car driving, in that you've got those guys that are going all on feel, and then you have those super technical guys, and you've got everything in between, right? And for a company, and I think that's why Dieled's progressing as well as it is, and why some of the other companies in the industry are doing as good as they are, is because you, for instance, you take end user feedback into account too. And end users that are able to quantify and describe what it is that's going on so that you can trust it, not just, oh, this is garbage. That was something we talked with Scott a lot about when we talked with him recently. You know, is everybody's got criticisms, but using those useful criticisms is super, super important. And yeah, it's cool, man. I love nerding out arrows with you. I think we spent the better parts of our ATA trips just talking about arrow stuff and just seeing people roll their eyes around us. Yeah, it's super, super cool.
Yeah, everybody knows when we get our hands out and we're, talking about this. Yeah, it's fun, man. I actually used to race go-karts. So when I was in high school, I raced for 5 years. So I have racing experience. That's how I got my research and development background. Is my dad was a tool and die maker. He's retired, but I would, I'm 15 years old. I would design parts for my go-kart on a Crayola slider plastic thing. I would draw it out and then give it to him. He would take it to work and make it. And then, his buddies loved it because they could work on a race car, basically. And so they would make parts as well. And then we would put them on the go-kart. We would go race. And it was, super, I drove for a kart shop and all that kind of stuff. So it's super competitive. And, it was my butt on the line. If things didn't work, I could have serious consequences for it. And so, but I love it, man. I mean, just that, and it's kind of that lifestyle where you don't have a 9-to-5 job, and that I've always been in research and development, so my 9-to-5 job is not necessarily anybody else's 9-to-5 job. It's just super interesting and super cool, and I think a lot of us are done that way, where we need something different in our lives rather than just a 9-to-5 job to kind of feel satisfied with things.
Absolutely. Yeah. If I only had a 9-to-5. I mean, I have a 9-to-5, but if that was the only thing I had, I'd be pretty just laying in bed, Netflix and Xbox and stuff. So no, it's definitely a much more satisfaction being able to do something yourself. And I mean, you are in a testimony that you just go. I haven't talked to you much, so this is, everybody's hearing first things that I've heard, and I mean, I'm very impressed with just your knowledge and your just drive to figure it out and make it better. And even if it doesn't need to be better, you're going to make it better anyway.
Yeah, just for the challenge of it, having free time on my hands, I just dive into something like that. Not always. I mean, I ride my mountain bike a lot when it's warm. That's my escape. So I'll go out and Steve Brunell actually said it on one of his videos where it was said something about, I need a little bit of danger and something occupying my mind in order to relax. So for me to go out and, like I said, I'm not smart. A lot of that's going through my head is just 50,000 things I need to do, and I can't remember to stay on track. TJ loves to make fun of me for that, but riding, you have to focus or you wreck, and I love doing it. It's good exercise, but it's also a lot of fun and kind of frees my mind up to think of other things. So I've thought of a lot of ideas while it's out there on the mountain bike. Hopefully it warms up here in Indiana sometime soon. But yeah, it's a good time. Like I said, the Dialed guys are good. Working with that team is a breath of fresh air, and there's just a lot going on right now. A lot to be excited about in the industry, period. You guys doing what you do, there's a whole new wave, I think, coming of people that are doing things a new way rather than just the same way they always have. So, really cool. Yeah.
Well, we appreciate your time, taking out of your day today and talk to us, give us all the knowledge that you have. One last question is, for all the listeners, what would be one step that you would advise somebody to take that next step in, whether it's building an arrow or doing something to their bow, and just become that much better at kind of that intermediate level?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, the way that I got into the tuning arrows and everything was messing with field points. So I sell 100 and 125, but you don't have to buy mine. Go online, buy cheap ones, buy 75 grain, 100 grain, 125, 150, and screw those on the end of your arrow. Shoot at a distance where, if you're if you stack arrows at 20, then go to 40. Somewhere where you'll actually see a difference in your groups. Shoot different points and see how your groups change. If your arrow is too weak, then you see a big shotgun style group. If your arrow is too stiff, then you see a tight group, and you'll get 1 or 2 flyers every time. And make sure that they're not the same arrows, so number your arrows. And then, you could kind of find that sweet spot where you're getting good groups, not shotguns and not the one-offs up there. And then you could kind of tune your arrow based on that. So you can, if you shoot better with a lighter point, then, maybe look at, you need a weaker shaft. So, get it cut an inch longer or something next time. And then if you shoot with better with a heavier point on the front of it, then that means you need a shorter shaft. So if you can take the inserts out, then you cut it a half inch shorter. Try it. It's not going to change things drastically, but and keep shooting. Repetitive is the key to everything. So, and this is part of it. So just play around with it. Taking a field point out and putting a new one in is super easy. They're super cheap, and that's how I got into it. And then once I felt comfortable doing that, I was seeing repeatable results. That's when I started messing with the links to the arrows, and then, that'll get you super close. What I do with my builds is basically tuned for your IBO, your draw length, and your draw weight, what you're going to be using the arrow for. If you're here on the East Coast, you're out west, and you're going to be shooting longer yardages. If you want to do a tack event, you're never going to shoot more than 20 yards. I take all that into account with the weight of the arrow, the speed of the arrow, et cetera, et cetera. But, you can get pretty far doing the other thing. My arrows are, like I said, I put a ton of work into them. There's a lot that goes into them that people don't and never will know about. I don't care. I know that I'm doing it good, and so that's what is important to me. That's why I get satisfaction. But I tell people, buying my arrows versus buying them in an archery shop, you could walk in, buy a handful of arrows from archery shop, you can go out and you can kill a lot of animals with it. What you're doing when you buy my arrows is basically like stacking the deck in your favor. So you're optimizing your hunts and increasing the odds of your hunts. I have arrows, like I said, for people that are 40 pounds and 27-inch draw to 25-inch draw to 33 and 85 or something like that. I built all in between. I have arrows that are in Africa right now and go all over the world, and drop animals that are huge and long ranges and all that stuff. And I've learned a lot as far as, what's important. FOC is not important. Don't even talk about FOC. It'll take 2 hours, but I know it's important. So that's what I built into my arrows, and that's how I stack the deck in favor for your hunts. So don't skimp on your arrows. There's arrows out there that are very expensive that are not very good. So see what everybody is shooting, see what people have good results with, and that's a relatively good way. I actually spine all my arrows so I know which ones are good, but which companies are good, which brands are good. But have fun with it. It's not terribly expensive to get a bunch of arrows and kind of sling them around and see what you can learn.
Yeah, that was pretty cool. Your builds, I will say, as far as components, if someone was trying to recreate it, they're not going to get the same exact results because they're not putting all the same steps in that you are. But if you look at the builds that you're doing, it's not like you're not building the super Gucci arrows that a lot of guys are pushing right now. But
yeah, I use iron wool components. They're expensive on some of my builds. They're really good, but they're you don't have to have them for everything. But the you get a 5,000 straight arrow and all that stuff and stock components. You come up with something that'll work for you and get her done. So,
well, Kyle, I think this was the bow nerdiest podcast we've recorded so far. I cannot wait for this one to drop. I think people are going to learn a lot. I always learn a lot every time I talk to you. So thanks again, man. We're going to have you on again for sure.
Yeah,
I appreciate that. And if you ever want to nerd out about something on the podcast, or just and give me a call as you do, and we'll nerd out for a couple hours, take a break from our days, and enjoy it. But no, man, I really appreciate you guys having me on here. It's super fun. I'm very excited for you guys. And man, it's always cool to hang out with you, TJ. It's great to meet you, Braxton. So hopefully we'll be together at ATA soon, and here maybe in Indianapolis when we go out and shoot, have a good time.
Absolutely. Awesome. Thanks so much, Kyle. We appreciate all the bow nerdiness, the new vocabulary for the day. All right,
Thanks,
guys,
guys.
that's going to wrap it up. Appreciate you guys jumping in and listening. Thanks again to Kyle, and we will catch you guys next time.